I'm just a fan, and I'm here with a short, not very long, spoiler free review of the recent horror movie called Us. I want to start by asking and answering a very simple question, which is kind of made for people who are watching a non spoiler review, people who haven't seen the movie before. That question is, should I see this movie? Now, it's not a perfect movie, but if you find yourself saying something like, well, I enjoy horror movies, but I'm not really sure about this one, go see the movie. If you find yourself thinking something like, I really like horror movies, but I don't want to be so scared, this one looks so scary, go see the movie. If you find yourself thinking, well, I've seen families get murdered in movies before, what's so special here, what's the difference, go see the movie. The movie Us is pretty good, and I knew as soon as I saw the trailer for this one, I had to see it. It looked terrifying, at least based on the trailer, and that's what I wanted to feel. I wanted to feel terrified. I think that's fun. The concept of going to a movie theater or watching a scary movie at home, I think it's fun in that type of context to be scared. Not that real life murders are fun or entertaining at all. And also, it's so fascinating to think about what can movie creators do with the visuals and the sound effects and the music they can provide, as well as the writing, dialogue, acting, stuff like that. How can they put these things together and make something scary? How do they evoke that type of emotion out of an audience? It's really interesting for me to think about, and that's one reason why I particularly like scary movies. Now, I had big expectations for this one, Us, and most of them paid off. It wasn't like it had a lot of problems. There were a lot of things that were very satisfying. A lot of things where, they set them up early and they pay off later. And there are also some things in the movie where I just said, what? Well, there are some weird aspects to this movie, and things where I couldn't help but think, why is that the way they chose to do it? It at least gets the viewer to think about it quite a bit, and that's pretty cool. After watching the trailer for the movie, I had some expectations for the movie that it would be kind of a basic plot. Basic family at home, their lives are probably pretty happy or, normal right now. They start getting terrorized by people who look exactly like them, and they may or may not be murdered by the end of the movie. That alone is enough to make a plot and a movie out of. I just figured it would be that very effectively done. Kind of like the movie The Strangers. Not the sequel. I never saw the sequel that came out kind of recently, but the original Strangers movie. Couple at home, they start getting terrorized by people in masks for not really any particular reason, seemingly, and they make an effective movie out of it, and that's great. And so I hope it's not too spoilery to say that for the movie Us, it was kind of the opposite of what I expected. I was expecting way more terror and less meaning to it, but there was actually quite a lot less terrifying stuff than I thought, and more meaning, more stuff going on behind the scenes, stuff going on in the characters' heads, and motivation, especially motivation of character. It was like, wow, there's so much more going on here than I ever would have thought. And it threw me off quite a bit just because of my expectations from the trailer. And it kind of was hard at first to figure out, what do I really think about this movie? Now, at least the trailer itself, you could say that, it didn't really show what the movie's really about. It didn't show enough. But I guess if anything, recently, in the past 5 or so years, trailers always show too much recently. I know too much going into certain movies. And so I can actually appreciate that this trailer kept things hidden. It said, here's your movie. It's going to have this kind of stuff in it. And it did, but I'm glad there was more going on than meets the eye when you really got into the movie. So hopefully that doesn't throw anybody off, kind of like I did, although it is nice to know nothing going into this movie. This is another one of those where the less you know going in, the much better you'll feel coming out of it. The visuals are very pleasing in this movie. There's lots of great perspective stuff. And the lighting, oh my gosh, the lighting. I hate it. I've seen this so many times in scary movies where they try so hard to make a scene physically, literally dark that they forget to make the movie watchable and enjoyable. And here, when it's a scene at night or a scene in a dark place, you can see what's going on. It's amazing. So I'm glad they didn't fall into that darn trap that horror movies seem to have in the past 15 years. The music's pretty good. It wasn't bad, but very interesting, especially right at the beginning and sort of later in the movie too. They play some music that's very particularly striking, I think on purpose to get the viewer's attention, and it works. And so I guess fine. It wasn't really like great, wonderful music, and after a while it does go into kind of basic horror movie music, or a lack thereof, which is just as effective sometimes. But the music, for what they did use, the times they used it, was fine. The acting is pretty darn good. There was one line I did not like at all, and then there were some lines I cringed at, and that's because, I hope this isn't too spoilery, there was a surprising amount of humor in this movie. And again, going back to the trailer and my expectations for it, this movie does not look funny. When you watch the trailer, it's like, this looks terrifying. And again, that's what I wanted to feel, but for half the movie, it was like, wow, like, that was such an out-of-place joke or such a weird time to throw in some humor. And so I would say that I would throw out half the humor. It's about what I would do because, yes, you do need to establish, here's your family, here's your characters, here's their names, here's how they feel about each other, here's how they feel about the situation they're in. You do need that in a movie so we can be, emotionally attached to what's going on to the family and what they're dealing with in this scary situation. So that's where humor is good and effective in a scary movie. But here, even in the scariest of scary situations, there's some thrown in lines, and it's like, wow, I can't even believe they just said that. Really weird stuff. So again, hopefully not too spoilery, but you'll be surprised if you haven't seen the movie how much you might laugh at, or how much the audience with you in the theater might laugh at it. It just did not seem to be that type of movie when you see the trailer. I'll end this shorter, non-spoiler review here in a few moments, and I'll give a bigger spoiler review later. I'm just trying to think, is there anything else I should say about the movie to make it seem interesting, or things I can mention because they're not spoilers? I think one last thing I want to say about it that I haven't said yet is that there's lots of good stuff that gets set up earlier on that pay off later, and it's even things like little dialogue pieces. Sometimes it feels like things are said, or things that characters do or done just for filler or for some characterization, and they seem to be, but also they do come back later in a surprisingly effective fashion, and that could almost make a movie feel less effective, make it feel more artificial. It's like everything got set up and everything has to pay off and everything has to connect, and it's almost too perfect. But in this type of movie, for whatever reason, since the acting is good and the writing is pretty good, it does feel like these things that happen did happen for a reason, and when they do get paid off later, it's like, wow, like this, wasn't just a lucky situation. Like this really meant something to this character or to these characters interacting together. So that's one last piece I would say about the movie. Good setup for the most part, and good payoff. I'm doing a full review of the movie with spoilers as well, and I have a lot to say about it. I'm excited to get to explore the whole movie without worrying too much about spoilers, and also all the things I have to say about it. It's going to be pretty interesting. So if you have seen the movie, feel free to check out that review as well. And if you haven't seen the movie, well, you know what to do. Go see the movie. And that's where this review is over. So thanks very much for being here. Hopefully you'll see me again in that full spoiler review of the movie Us.